Hi, designers. Welcome to the Make and Design podcast. I'm your host, Carina Gardner. And today I have a special guest with me. Vincent Wanga is an amazing creative director. He's a serial entrepreneur, and we're going to get to know him together on today's podcast. Welcome, Vincent.
Thank you, Karina. I'm really excited for our conversation and thank you for having me on.
We're going to really just jump right into things. And I would love to talk a little bit about kind of getting started. Like, how did you come into the design realm?
Yeah, that's such an interesting story. I talk about this a lot, so I'll try to be concise, but it was a very nonlinear path. I was this kind of fine arts uh, enthusiast. I was into sculpture and pottery and architecture and fine arts and all these different pursuits. And I never really kind of focused on what that professional aspect could be for the rest of my career until I discovered design in high school in a special program where I had all these resources to explore design, design software, figure out how it works with marketing to actually create commercially viable products in addition to video production and other things. So long story short, I ended up going to a design school in South Florida, where I really flourished in kind of this budding professional development. And then when I was really getting into it, I got kicked out of school for financial reasons. It was a very
Mm.
expensive school. I was mostly self-funding, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who can relate to that story. So the point here is that my amazing career that I had aspirations since I was little stopped before it even started. And that really took a lot out of me because I was lost and I didn't know, what I was going to do. And that's where kind of entrepreneurship really entered into my life. And because I couldn't get a job and I didn't have a degree and I had all this debt, I had to figure out, how I could be viable. So I took what little skills that I had learned and developed, and I started off on my own. And, I started small, working for, one-off mom and pop shops off of Craigslist and building a client base. And that eventually snowballed into enough work to build a portfolio that allowed me to present it to local agencies to get a job and restart my career. So if you hear me talk a lot about entrepreneurship, it's because it was this alternative that really not only saved my career, but has really created a sense of freedom and empowerment that is unique in our field. So I definitely took the scenic route to getting into my field, but in hindsight, I'm really grateful for those experiences.
Yeah, would you say that was a blessing in disguise?
Absolutely. And it's less about what happened getting kicked out of school and more learning about your resiliency. I think it is. Everyone faces these seminal moments in their life and they think this is it. This is the worst things can get. I can't get through this. I'm done. And you know what? You find a way to power through. And it teaches you something, not necessarily in that moment, but the next time you face an inflection point like that, you're like, this isn't worse than the last thing. I actually believe I'll get through this time. And it helps you really develop a self-confidence and resiliency that is absolutely necessary in any profession, but especially when you get into entrepreneurship, because you'll face those moments often. And that's what I'm most grateful for is just learning what you're made of and your ingenuity and your ability to kind of adjust and adapt and thrive and survive.
Yeah, incredible. I think one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast is one of the first things that I saw was that you say that design is not enough, that there's actually more that you need to have. And I think you and I agree with that. Will you talk a little bit about that? What's the more? Because there are lots of designers who are graduating from school. You guys that are listening, those of you who are graduating from the University of Arts and Design, which you guys know is through us, you're coming out and it's like, okay, I'm a designer. Now what? Right. So, what's the other thing that we need other than just design?
Yeah, well, I'll approach this a couple different ways. First of all, is that I never believe if you are a creative that you're just creative in one thing. I know people who are amazing designers, but also are great on the guitar, and would really love to start a band. Or maybe they want to make films in Hollywood like I did, or they want to become an architect. There's always this curiosities that can apply to different things. So don't limit yourself just because you're a professional designer in a really narrow aspect of specialty, that you can express those other creative pursuits in other ways. And I think that's one reason I'm a huge advocate for like the side hustles. You know, develop those into something that one becomes this mental break from the mundane pursuits of your day job. No, even though we have one of the greatest jobs in the world, it can get mundane and it is stressful, and we have to do this. We can't do the same thing twice. So find ways that you can have a creative outlet that's related to your day job, but it's different. I also appreciate when those side hustles allow you to use your hands, are not tactile, similar to what you do, with print and pattern making. I mean, it's so powerful in this digital age to just be able to touch things and feel things and build things. And it's such a cathartic release from the stresses of our day jobs. And the most important lesson there is you never know when that side hustle, that side thing can turn into a viable business that can give you the freedom from that 9 to 5 pursuit where you can be an entrepreneur and self-employed and make your own hours and turn this craft that you're so passionate about into a viable business that can sustain you for the rest of your life. So I always encourage designers to never limit their creativity to just one thing. Explore those things in side hustles, and you never know when that could be your future. I think the second thing is, what is the end goal of your career? Is it to be an executor for the rest of your life? That's great, but focus on that. Or do you have aspirations to maybe get into leadership? That's where things get tricky. Now you're managing people and you're facing a whole new level of stress, and there's different skills that you need to be a leader than an individual contributor. So I always encourage people before they even get to that point, what is the vision of your career? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? Because if you know what that vision is, and it's okay, that vision can adapt, it makes it a lot easier to reach that goal because you're focused on it, and the decisions that you make on that path will help you get there sooner and more effectively than if you don't have a plan at all.
Yeah, I love the idea of a plan, right? Because I think we all go into it going, we're creative, we just want to do all the things and we make all the things. And then
Mhm.
we're like, wait, where am I going with this, right? Leadership is really tough. And I will say, being a solo entrepreneur for many years and now having two large teams, it does take you a little bit by surprise what
Yeah.
you end up doing with your daily life. Will you talk a little bit about that transition?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up because that is the most powerful thing that you'll kind of face in this journey is that transition point, because oftentimes it won't happen exactly the way you thought it would. And if you talk to any leader anywhere, and I'm sure you can attest to this, it kind of sneaks up on you. You thought you were an entrepreneur building an independent business, then things go really well, you scale, and now you have a team. Guess what? You're a leader. So, you could be in a company and somebody leaves or get fired, and now they're offering you that opportunity, and you are now managing people in one promotion. So this is a really intimidating step that I would say at least half people fall off at, because the skills to be a leader, as I mentioned earlier, are completely different than the skills that you need to be an individual contributor. And I always advise people, if that is an aspiration for you, we talked about having a plan, you should start developing those skills now. And we can get into the specifics of those skills, but really it's important to plan for those things. I always believe, luck is when opportunity meets preparation, so that when that opportunity comes, often sooner or different than you expected, you're at least prepared for it and you're ready to make that transition effectively, because there's no school for this as far as getting a degree in leadership. If you don't have a great mentor or somebody in your life who's helping prepare for this, you can really get blindsided, and you'll reach this amazing goal of becoming a leader or manager, and then you're not prepared for it and you'll burn out. And unfortunately, you'll not want to be involved in that in the future. And that's kind of what I'm trying to avoid, it by being transparent about what it takes to be there, but also it's something you should aspire to and really want, and not just for money, but for the fact of serving people and building people and helping guide the creative process.
Have you been dreaming of earning a master's degree or a design certificate that could lead you to launch your very own business? The University of Arts and Design has unique programs where you not only learn how to design, but how not to be a starving artist, which is why I created it. Join us in our upcoming Design Your Future event. Visit uad.education/design your future to learn more about our students, discover the courses that we offer, and find out more about how you can become part of something truly unique in the university experience. Yeah, incredible. So I'm going to talk about the two ways we're seeing people become leaders in our communities, and maybe you can talk about maybe the skill sets that they could work on in order to be better in these two roles. So
Sure.
the first one is we are seeing a lot of, in particular, our Design Suite members and some of our university students take on VAs. So it's kind of your first step into leadership, right? You get a
Hmm.
virtual assistant who maybe helps you with prepping all of your files, doing some customer service for you, doing some administrative stuff. So that's kind of the first level. It's kind of your first like baby step into being a leader and being in charge of someone else. So that's the first one we see. The second one we're seeing quite a bit, which we love so much, is where you're not hiring people, but you're kind of being leaders in your community. So maybe you reach out to 4 or 5 other designers, and we see this often in Design Suite. You're with 4 or 5 other designers and you're trying to lead a group, and you guys are trying to put together social media together. You're trying to promote each other. You're doing email lists together. Will you talk about, I don't know if there are some overlap on skills on these two subsets, but maybe some skills that they could develop to help them become better leaders in these two areas?
Absolutely. And then rather than address them separately, I'm going to address them holistically because I think you should always over-index on the soft skills that are essential. Because one thing I experienced in my career is I came into one company to manage a small fledgling team, and that scaled to over, 24 people who are multidisciplinary within 2 years. So you never know when your small team or individual person you're managing can really turn into a full-fledged team. So I always want to prepare people for the best case scenario. So specific skills that I think you should really focus on is one, leadership should be a calling, something you want to do, not something you feel you have to do, or a financial incentive, as I mentioned earlier. Emotional intelligence is really, really key. And for anyone who doesn't know what I mean by that, it starts with empathy and understanding that the people that you're managing are human beings. They all have their own individual temperaments, circumstances you have to manage on the individual level as well as the team. Susan's circumstance where she has to commute in for 3 hours and she's pregnant is different than John, who might live next door. That doesn't mean Susan gets preferential treatment. It just means you understand her circumstance and you adjust accordingly versus the other person. So understand them at an individual level. Another thing that's really important is relationship building. You have to understand that not only do you have to build relationships with your team, but with your stakeholders, with your partners, with your vendors. Those are essential, and you represent the team in those transactions. And you have this duality between those people and your team, and you're kind of this translator back and forth, between those different things. You have to also be decisive. People are relying on you not just to make decisions, but the toughest decisions. And I think what people often don't realize is by the time it reaches, your desk, Carina, it's not an easy problem. Somebody hasn't solved it at that point. So they're asking for your expertise and experience to make a decisive but effective decision. And you have to be decisive and confident in your experience in order to do that. And then another thing is just having this intuition. And what I mean by this intuition, and I think that comes with experiences, I always like to say that leadership is not quite a dictatorship. It's not quite a democracy. It's a balance. And sometimes you got to dictate to your team and lead them through, even when they doubt you. And other times you got to listen to them and their innovations and their new way of looking at things and adapt your leadership accordingly and take their advice and humble yourself. And knowing when to do one or the other is that intuition that you build with experience that will really help you balance when to lead your team forward and when to listen and take feedback and help maintain that relationship that you have with your team. So that's just a few things I'm touching on that are really essential and help describe the difference between the skills you need to be a leader versus an individual contributor.
Oh my gosh, you said so much there. I hope everybody was taking notes. Like the democracy versus dictatorship, I feel it so strongly because it would be easy if it were one or the other.
Yep.
Like if I were a dictator, then I could just make all the decisions and call it good. If it was
Mhm.
a democracy, I could just put everything to a vote and we could just go with it. But it's finding that balance that is actually so hard. And honestly, what I find is some team members want to be dictated to.
Yep.
And some team members want to have more say. And so it's really difficult because you're trying to fill everybody out for what they want and make sure that you're giving them what they want, which is so hard.
It's so hard, and that is, part of our transparency with leadership is it's not easy, and I want people to understand that. People just see the paycheck and the upgrade in the lifestyle, and they don't see the upgrade in responsibilities, because the other thing is that the buck stops with you. So whether you chose the democracy route or the dictator route, if it's the wrong choice, you have to take ownership. And that's part of that emotional intelligence. When things go great, you praise your team. When things go wrong, you should point the finger at yourself first. And I think no collaborative team has individual mistakes. And you have to realize that you're taking ownership of those decisions regardless. But I also believe that through your experience, the whole reason you're in leadership is not just because you're the most talented person. That's not always true. The people under you should be the most talented person. That's how your thing grows and excels and moves forward. But you should be amongst the most experienced. And even if they disagree with you, if your intuition is telling you to rely on that experience, that's when that dictator comes in and says, guys, I've done this before. I need you to trust me. And hopefully you've earned their trust. And this is the path forward. But also, if they have a new innovative way of doing something, you also have to turn into that more democratic person and be like, you know what? I've done this way forever. This is a new approach. It's more efficient, it's more effective. You guys are right. Let's test this out and maybe I'll learn something. And that is that exchange that really makes the best partnerships between leaders and individual contributors that they lead. And I've learned that the hard way, and I've thrived when I found that happy balance between their innovation way of looking at things and my expertise.
Yeah, I love that we're having this conversation because I think there are probably some of you sitting at home. And I mean, there are thousands of you guys like listening to this, and you're like, I only ever want to be a solopreneur. I'm going to raise my hand to say that's what I thought I was going to be as well. For years and years and years, I was a solopreneur. You guys know many, like I've worked for a lot of different companies. I still do. They're awesome. I love it. I had no idea that at some point I'd be working with two very large teams.
Mhm.
And so even if you're like, you know what, I'm only going to be a solopreneur, many of you at some point probably are going to manage somebody. You're probably going to manage a group. And so these soft skills really are still going to help you. I also want to say, and I'd be curious what you'd say about this, Vincent. Give yourself some grace at the beginning because you're just not going to do it right. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I love the analogy of parenthood. This child thinks you have it all figured out and you know what you're doing, and really you don't. At least that first child. You're really kind of building the plane as you fly, but you have to do it confidently. And it's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. Like your team should respect you. And if they respect you, they will understand that you're not going to be right 100% of the time. I have 20 plus years of experience and I'm wrong often. So that's okay. So not only do you have to give them grace, they got to give you some grace, especially when you're starting out. And that should be based off of mutual respect. I loved your comment about the solopreneur, because if anyone's wondering why they should listen to me, it's because I've done so many things in so many industries, including being the solopreneur. And the funny thing is, when you get really good at that, it scales. And then all of a sudden you find yourself from being an independent freelancer like I was to owning an agency and having clients and a team. And guess what? Now you're a leader. So you never know if the goal is to be successful. That's probably the outcome where you're going to be managing people. So you should think about the scale and not just what you're doing now. Here's what I learned on my lesson in solo entrepreneurship. I really enjoyed it because I got to make all the decisions. I got to work faster. I could scale really quickly. But the downside was, I think creatives inherently are collaborative. And what I missed was having other people I could bounce ideas off of. I noticed over time my work suffered just because I was in this vacuum of my own ideas. So even if you're a solo entrepreneur without a team, link up with fellow solo entrepreneurs and be like, hey, what do you think of this pattern? What do you think of this paper? What do you think of this idea? Find a community where you can at least have that dialogue and feedback and collaboration to make up for the fact that you don't have a team, because just being in your own kind of silo really, at least for me, affected my work and my ability to kind of innovate because I didn't have anybody to bounce ideas off of. So find a community at minimum that you can share those ideas with as you scale. But just keep in mind that if you're a successful business, you will scale. So plan for the scale, plan for having a team. And that starts with building these leadership qualities that hopefully, if you do it right, you will need. And that's a positive thing because it means you're growing.
Yeah, I mean, you said two things there that I think is so true. True. You guys listening, if you're good at your job, it is hard not to grow so much, have so many clients, or have so many great, those of you who are doing online platforms and licensing deals, you're like, you're scaling accidentally. And that's what happened to me. I remember when we hit several six figures in. And I was like, if I don't get an assistant, I'm going to break. Like, like if I don't get some help, I'm going to break because you are so successful at that point. So you do end up accidentally in this leadership role without kind of knowing it. Oh gosh, you said something else there that I was like, oh, that is so, so good. Now I can't remember it because I just went on that little tangent. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, if it jogs your memory, feel free to jump in. But a really good point you made there is when you're a solo entrepreneur, so many responsibilities fall on you. You thought you were getting into this because you want to create, an amazing widget, right? But now you find yourself at a certain level of scale where you are doing accounting, where you're, doing basic contracts, where you're chasing down clients for payments, where, you're doing operations and project management. The thing that you actually joined this venture to do is maybe only 10% of your time, and you're spending the rest of 90% running the business. This leads to unhappiness and unfulfillment sometimes. So the whole point of a team is to take those burdens off and bring in experts who can do those things so you can focus on the craft, or you focus on those things so they can do the craft. Maybe you love the operating part of the business, but that is the point, is to relieve that burden. Nobody can do all these things. So just don't get in that trap. The second piece of advice I'd give people is oftentimes we're so focused on the craft, we don't realize that this is a business. If you are a solopreneur and you're selling products and you're not paying yourself, you're a hobby. You're not a business until you're paying yourself, and your time is valuable. So make sure you factor that into your business and you get to a point where you are paying yourself as an employee so that you actually have a viable product, and then you can scale that and start paying other employees that help lead to further scale. Don't treat this as a hobby where it's just, I've sold $1,000 a month of this stuff, but you didn't factor in the 100 hours you put in to sell that product where you are uncompensated. This is a business. And in addition to the soft skills I mentioned, you should have business skills and understand what a profit and loss statement looks like, and what your profit margins are, and what your go-to market strategy is, and what your marketing strategy is. These are also important fundamental things you should apply just as much as the leadership skills that we mentioned earlier.
Oh my gosh. It's like he read my mind. I'm sure my team, I'm thinking my coaches are listening to this going like, it's like they think the exact same way. Like literally, you guys, I know you want to become a designer or you want to be a fine artist, but really you're becoming a design business owner. You're becoming a fine artist business owner. And so even as you were talking, I was thinking about how like you do have accounting, and I hate accounting and I hate dealing with accounting, right? But either you got to learn it or you got to hire it out. Right. So, so good there. I think this kind of leads us into your book. You have a new book. Can we talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. As I mentioned, I've done a lot of things in a lot of years. So one of the audacious goals I had was just to write a book. When I had that goal, I didn't know what it would be about. I really thought it'd be some sort of cathartic, manuscript about my journey and my history. And I realized as I started writing it, it needed to be less about me and more about how. I talked about earlier how I took this very scenic route full of disappointment and failure into my, rather impressive career given those circumstances. But I'm not here to brag about what I've done and what I do. It's more about how did I get there? Because there's a lot of people I'm sure listening who have faced obstacles or will face obstacles, bigger, different than mine. It is inevitable, it is a part of life. And how you can apply those lessons in failure to a path to success, knowing that you're not going to get around them. You have to go through them. So the book kind of evolved as I was writing it into this guide of one, if your aspirations are to become a creative leader, we've just talked at length about how that can happen sooner than later, no matter what your pursuit is. Here are the specific skills I've learned the hard way through failure, through success, that can help you be the most effective leader possible, whether that's a business leader or in an organization. It doesn't matter if it's entrepreneurial or entrepreneurial. It's also really personal. I didn't want to write a book that just, ChatGPT could write. It talks about my background and my history to make a point that I don't come from this pedigree where it's just like, oh, I get it. That's why he's successful. Like, no, I started from the bottom. I hit every branch on the way down, and then I climbed my way back up. And so can you. And I want to encourage people, regardless of their race or gender or immigration status or whatever your circumstance you're going through, you can find success. Here's how I did it. Here's what I faced. And here are specific tactical steps you can take to be the most effective leader possible on that journey. And I don't think it just applies to creatives. I think anybody in any pursuit can find inspiration in this book. But that was my motivation, is to share those resources and to write the book I wish existed when I started my career, to save you guys the time that I did on my detours, to hopefully get to success faster than I did. And the
I
book
love
is
it.
called The Art of Direction, Personal Perspectives on the Path to Creative Leadership. And it talks a lot about my personal journey accordingly.
Where can they access this book? Is it on Amazon or there's some places that they can find it?
Absolutely. It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Books a Million, bookshop.org, all the major online retailers. It's also, you can access it through my website, vincentwanga.com, where I have a lot of my thought leadership that I talk about, and other events and things that I get involved in. But those are the primary ways you can buy the book. And I encourage people, if you're thinking about that pursuit, even if it's in the distant future, build those skills. I talk a lot about it. Um, Always be prepared for the opportunities you never know come. You'll put yourself in a much better position than trying to figure it out as the plane flies when you get those opportunities. And hopefully, if you're successful, you will face this inevitably. And that is the point that we're trying to emphasize here.
Yeah, I love it so much. Okay, the book is called The Art of Direction. If you are looking for it, you can go visit his website. I am going to just spell out Vince's last name because sometimes I know when we're listening on a podcast, you're like, I did not catch that, Carina. You guys tell me. Like, I love when you guys email and like, where was that again? Can I find that? Someone on my team has to respond to you. Okay, so it's Vincent Wanga, and the last name is spelled WANGA.com. Okay. So go check it out. Go see what he's doing. I love all of this. Before we leave today, I would love like one piece of advice you would give to an aspiration or a budding designer as they're kind of starting this endeavor.
Absolutely. And a lot of the advice I give is counterintuitive to things that people hear because I'm giving it from my perspective on what has worked. So just take that with a grain of salt. I'm not going to tell you things that you just want to hear. And the reason I'm prefacing that is I think people think a little bit too systematically. I'm a designer. I just started out. My first thing is like, how can I figure out what I'm doing? And then I get to the next level, and then I'll get to the next level, and then I'll get to the next level, and then I'll get to that final outcome. I don't know what it is. I think completely backwards. When I had zero level of experience, I'm thinking about what is my ideal outcome. I want to own an agency or I want to be an entrepreneur. Think big, think broad, keep it general, but start with that North Star, that big, grand vision. You're not locked in stone. It can change as you evolve in your career, but you have to really understand what the end game is at the beginning because you're going to have to face so many decisions on this journey. And if you don't know what that North Star is for you, you might make a decision that takes you away from it. Where if you do, you can make decisions that get you there faster. So I always encourage, especially at the beginning, be bold, be audacious. Think about what that grand North Star is for your career. Forget practicality here. If the goal is to be the greatest in whatever your pursuit is, great. Put that up somewhere. Tell people, vocalize it. Don't let your dreams die in silence because there might be somebody along your journey who heard you say that, who can help make that a reality like they did for me. So declare your dreams, make them bold and audacious, use that as your North Star, and then make decisions accordingly. And I promise you, you will get there a lot faster than if you're kind of going through your career or life with osmosis, just thinking these opportunities are just going to fall in your lap. I can tell you in the most hard way, they will not. You have to be proactive and plan, but be bold. And that's a great place to start out.
Oh, such great advice. So good, you guys, especially when decision making fatigue really ends up in the way. So, like being able to know where you're going to head, or as Vincent says, your North Star, I think that is phenomenal. Vincent, thank you so much for joining us. We're super excited that you guys got to hear from him. Once again, go check out his new book, The Art of Direction, and you can go visit his website at vincentwanga.com. As always, you guys know we love having you here. And I hope you're enjoying Make and Design, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye, guys.
Want to hang out more? Go to designsuitecourses.com/free to get our weekly freebies and patterns, die cut files, and more. Can't wait to see you there.